Hi, everybody. I'm John Kraska, Executive Director for EveryLibrary and the EveryLibrary Institute. This is our EveryLibrary Live series. Thank you for joining us today during National Library Week 2024. We are going to spend a little bit of time with the noted author Alexander McCall Smith, talking about his new work and also retrospectively some of the things that he's done. But we also want to be a little bit mindful about National Library Week. It's a time that we spend here in the States honoring our school libraries, our public libraries, academic libraries, for the roles that they play in fostering education, building community, providing access to a world of literature. EveryLibrary, my organization, is the National Political Action Committee for Libraries. We also have the EveryLibrary Institute, which is a public policy, text policy, education policy think tank for libraries. EveryLibrary Live. Today, it should be an exceptional episode because we are joined by, as I said, Alexander McCall Smith. Alexander, good to see you today. He's
Hello.
a luminary, folks, in the literary world. His stories, I think, have touched a lot of hearts and delighted people from many different walks of life. He's a prolific author. As you know, he's best known for his #1 Ladies Detective Agency series, but he's authored numerous other titles: the 44 Scotland Street series, the Isabel Dalhouse series, several children's books. I think that when Wikipedia says it, you have to listen. His work is celebrated for its humor, exploration of moral questions, and vividly painted settings and characters. Alexander, it's nice to be able to be here today to talk to you about your latest work, The Perfect Passion Company, and also, chatting about libraries and the state of the culture of reading around the world. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much for the invitation, John. It's a great pleasure.
Yes. How are things in Scotland? I'm in suburban Chicago myself. Spring is springing.
Well, spring is technically here, but the problem about spring is that it arrives in that technical sense, and then the elements seem to think otherwise. So we've got, at the moment, rather a lot of cold wind, a certain amount of rain, nothing unusual in Scotland. We have a very peculiar climate here in Scotland, which is, I suppose, part of the country's charm, but we're waiting for spring. Technically here, but not quite here.
No, I understand. I mean, your books have been set in many different parts of the world. This current one, The Perfect Passion Company, is set in Edinburgh. And if I may, it's a great little story. The main character, Katie, takes the helm of a dating agency and is looking to mend lonely hearts around the city. I think that's a delightful theme. But you're also taking an opportunity with the Perfect Passion Company to tell, I think, an unconventional story. It's a story about companionship. It's a story about compassion in a lot of ways. But using the hook of a dating agency, Alexander, I mean, how did you develop that character? Why did you go that way?
Well, I think the interesting thing about a dating agency, introductions agency, marriage bureau, call it what you will, is that it enables all sorts of characters to come in the front door. And that really is a very useful device. That indeed was the reason why I chose to write about Precious Ramotswe in Botswana as being the owner of a detective agency, because people could come to her with problems. And I think as an author, you have to find some sort of setting which will enable all sorts of random characters to come in and join in the action, so to speak. So something like a marriage bureau is quite a good way of doing that. You can have lots of characters. You can look at their backstory, at their problems, their experience in life, and make use of that. So it's quite a useful device. Plus, there's the additional aspect of an interest in friendship and in romance, which I think probably is something that interests most of us. We go through life looking for friends and partners and so on, because otherwise life would be a very lonely business. So friendship is very, very important, and marriage and partnership, all the different combinations that are available to people these days, these are very important things. We don't want to be lonely in this life. Loneliness is a very sad thing in many respects. So friendship is an antidote to loneliness.
Well, I think that the idea that it lets a lot of people come through the front door
Yeah,
is very smart. There's an airline pilot character I recall who you had to send to a cooking school. There was a hotelier who had a very dominating mother. I mean, these are not just character tropes, though. The way that you explore characters, it has these people have a rich inner life. The characters over the years that you've written also have a deep, I think, sense of morality, and the opportunity to reflect on the human condition. The difference between being solitary and being alone. There's a different mode to that. How do you approach these kind of characters? I mean, the difference between a lead character like Katie and supporting characters here, but they're all, I think, very well developed.
well, that's kind of you to say that. I think that as an author, you go through life, or you should go through life, with your eyes open, looking at people whom you meet, and you'll see that all the characters that you could possibly want are out there in real life. You don't necessarily base your characters on actual people. People often say to authors, "Did you base that character on so and so?" And the answer is, certainly from my point of view, I avoid doing that. But I take from my experience of other people, I take, I suppose, certain characteristics, put them together, and you get, I hope, what is a credible character. And of course, people are tremendously fascinating. If you look at most people, there's a wealth of experience there. If you can get them to tell you about their life story, for example, you're unlikely to be bored. Even people who are leading relatively uneventful lives have drama in their lives. They have ambitions, they have wants, they have hopes, they have disappointments. All of that is part of the human condition. So it's just a question of wanting to write about the human condition. I think that I tend to probably write about people in a reasonably, well, I hope reasonably affirmative way, in that I'm interested in some of the things that sometimes can get ignored in our world. So I'm very interested in kindness. Kindness is a remarkable quality, and I find it very moving when I see kindness in operation. It will make me tear up quite quickly, actually, if I see that sort of kindness. I think that we probably have been a little bit too ready to write about the confrontational and the difficulty that we encounter, the difficulties we encounter in this life, confrontations, difficulties, problems, etc. And we entertain ourselves by looking at the various sorts of pathological behavior, violence, conflict, and so on. I feel that's only part of life's story, that all the time, the major part of the iceberg, the bit that we don't necessarily see all the time, is kindness, stability, courtesy, and cooperation, human cooperation. Those are the things that I find very, very interesting, and one can explore them in fiction and delve quite deeply into.
Well, it's interesting. Some authors are very wicked to their characters, and well, some of your characters in the Number One Ladies Detective Agency series, some moments in The Perfect Passion Company certainly are awkward for
Yeah.
your characters. I mean, the idea of moving towards companionship and love and exposing yourself that way it writes awkward, but you're never wicked to them, and I appreciate that about you.
Well, yes, I must say that I have in the past occasionally tried to write villains
Okay.
in action, but the problem is my villains end up being not quite as villainous as they should be, and I end up feeling rather sympathetic to the villains.
So you don't have a Moriarty in you, then I take it.
Well, I do. In the Number One Ladies Detective Agency, we have a woman called Violet Sofotho who crops up, and Violet is always getting up to mischief, and so she's the person who, rather like a pantomime villain, the readers all hiss and boo when she comes on the stage. But in fact, we see her, although she's she is capable of really, I suppose, wreaking havoc in a way. Nonetheless, we need to see that she has her finer points somewhere, that she has a reason perhaps why she's being so unpleasant. And I think that's the interesting thing about portraying these people. Most people are not irredeemably bad. Most people actually really might be difficult for a reason. There may be a reason why they appear to us to be unpleasant. And in a way, it's probably important that we should try to understand why they are as they are. And if we can find it in ourselves to forgive them, we can forgive them. Forgiveness is another thing which I find really, really interesting. We live in a world where people have been talking more about almost revenge, about dealing with making people accountable, dealing with the difficult people, humiliating them, beating them, and so on. Actually, really, are we talking enough about forgiveness as well? Which I think is really a terribly important value in society.
There is a palliative quality to forgiveness socially, not just individually. And there is in the Western tradition, and this is still in Eastertide here, the forgive us as we forgive them.
Yes, yeah. No, forgiveness is absolutely essential. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we get mired in endless blood feuds. Mm-hmm. If you don't forgive, you clutter your moral life with all sorts of ancient wrongs, mm-hmm. Which really limit the extent to which you can deal with the problems that you face in the present. So we obviously can't ignore the past. We can't say that the past is irrelevant to us, because the past actually is pretty relevant. The past still has its political uses. It's invoked in contemporary politics and so on. But we must realize that the past can clutter up our present unacceptably, and that if you go through life dwelling on past wrongs, then your relationship with other people is going to be I suppose, impeded. So I think that really is terribly important. And if you look at the times that we're living in at the moment, we're living in times where we're seeing some very, very marked conflicts going on in the world, in which people are up against one another and are reflecting on the wrongs done on both sides historically all the way through. And what future is there with that other than continued distress and suffering?
So many of the problems here in the States with book bans and attempts to censor materials are not necessarily about the freedom of speech. They seem to be, to me, very much campaigns of erasure. You're going after someone's story, and if you can either criminalize that story, negate that story, it really is intended to it's discriminatory as much as it is about the right to read, the intellectual freedom concepts. And what you're describing here, censorship lacks compassion, I would suggest.
Yes, I think you're quite right. I think that it's in a sense, it's when one tries to look at the past and censor references to the past, and censor authors or lecturers or whatever, you're denying humanity to a very, very great extent. You're saying that this person doesn't count in the same way in which you count, and so on. I think this, of course, then feeds into an atmosphere of extraordinary toxic division, where you have two sides lined up against one another, and where putting down the other side, criticizing the other side, belittling the other side, making sure the other side doesn't get any advantage at all, becomes your main concern. And you end up with a divided society, and I fear that we are living in very, very divided circumstances in so many countries. I know that that's an issue in your politics in the United States. I mean, my American friends talk to me about this and say we are such a divided country. They've been saying that for some years, and I can understand why they say that. And it does seem that there are very great divisions between people there. But we're experiencing it also in the UK and in Scotland, where I live. We have people who are at one another's throats because of this sense of division. We really actually need to celebrate one another. We need to join in as far as possible in mutual programs. We need to recognize that there are different visions of the good, that the person with whom you appear to disagree, and maybe disagree quite strongly, actually also has a notion of the good, which may be a bit different from your own. And we must always, I think, be prepared to put ourselves into the shoes of the other. That's so important. And that, of course, is what books are about. Fiction, to a very great extent, enables our moral imagination to develop. Children's books are so important from that point of view, because children's books allow for the growth of moral imagination, and the child realizes, yes, it is a bit different being somebody else, and this is how that other person thinks.
Mm-hmm. Let me take a bit of a detour back into 2023. I was reading your blog, and I do want to put that up on the screen for folks here, because they can follow along with your writing journey, your travel journey at alexandermccallsmith.com. But I was reading on your blog, Alexander, about 2023 and the extraordinary moments that happened in that. The first one being that you've spent 25 years now with the #1 ladies detective agency.
Yes.
And the reflection on those characters, the evolution of those characters, of course, but the reflection on, I mean, a lifetime of writing. What you're describing here around the morality, of the compassion, that comes from a deep place. But have you felt that over the last several decades of spending time with these ladies, a leavening in your own life like that?
Yes, I think that if you spend a lot of time with fictional characters, they become part of your circle, of your universe. So I have, I think, been invited by my characters, by these fictional people, to think about certain aspects of my life. So Mara Matsui is a fictional creation. She was there in my mind, and I developed her. But I'm aware of what she stands for, and she, of course, is typical of a certain sort of person whom you will meet in Botswana, where she lives. These very resourceful, intuitive, very good women. Mm-hmm. And so I'm aware of her presence. So if I'm ever tempted to think uncharitable thoughts or to do something mean and selfish, there's a sort of sense, well, what would Mara Matsui say about that? So a fictional character can be a companion in one's life.
I think that's delightful. Also, if I may, in 2023, you had 2 audiences with King Charles. You had a Lifetime Achievement Award. Alexander, that's got to be, I mean, heavy as the head.
Well, I must say, King Charles is a remarkable, very remarkable man. He's very, very exercised over the plight of humanity. He really is. He spends a lot of his time. He works, I gather, amazingly hard, trying to bring people together and trying to get, and this is, I think, an important part of his work, trying to get us to be more aware of the danger that we have put the world in, mm-hmm. by mistreating our surroundings, by mistreating nature. And I think he's been talking about that for a very long very long time. And I think increasingly people are realizing that what he's been saying consistently about that is something which people are responding to now. I think our world is an injured one, and I think that we really have to do something quite quickly. And many people, of course, are doing that. I think, it's not all doom and gloom. There are very positive developments being made, but I think he's done an awful lot of work there, and he's also done a terrific amount of charitable work with schemes to help young people get on with their jobs, with their innovations. All of that is very important. Teaching them skills, the many wonderful skills that people have had, which are being lost because there aren't apprenticeships in things like glass etching or metalwork, and many of these crafts are being lost. And I think he does quite a lot in that respect.
That's a fascinating portfolio that he has. I mean, I read quite a bit about libraries, coming in from our colleagues in England with CILIP in particular, the colleagues in Scotland with CILIP as well. The libraries in the UK are uneven right now. The state of play for libraries in Scotland is much more robust than it is in England, and same thing goes for around here in the States. I mean, we've got some states right now that are thriving with libraries, and others where the state legislature is looking to criminalize librarianship, quite literally. I mean, so you're on the moors, you're on the coast up there. I mean, how often do you get to your local library? What are you seeing about libraries in general?
Well, I think libraries probably throughout the world are under a bit of attack initially of a financial nature, leaving aside the ideological issues involved. But I suppose as government spending is squeezed, unfortunately, people look around for easy targets, what they consider to be easy targets, so they go for like
austerity budgeting is a pernicious thing.
Well, I suppose yes. I mean, there are issues there. People would have an argument about whether you can spend money you haven't got and how much you borrow, and all of that sort of obviously takes place in the background. But I think that what you have to do is you have to identify those goods in society that are absolutely essential for human flourishing, and it's not it's not an overwhelming list. One of them is the life of the mind, and the life of the mind is supported by books and by music. Music is another area that is under attack, and I think it's really tragic when you see cutbacks in educational spending going for the music departments, because music is so important in teaching children how to communicate with one another. If you have children who are well trained musically, you've got the beginnings of good citizens there. They play with other people. This is what music is all about. You're joining in a communicative activity with other people. Libraries, I think, are absolutely central to this, to have a place in society where the book is celebrated, where the book is freely available to people. It's just a marvelous public good. Now, libraries have become rather more than that, in that they're places where you can borrow music, they're places where you can look up things on the computer and so on. So they're just great cultural goods. And
yes, when you spoke about the crafts and the arts, as King Charles is looking to help cultivate, those academies, those journey, the apprenticeships, the journeymen, the opportunity to sit with. The library does provide, in the same way a music hall provides, an opportunity to sit with folks who are long gone and learn their craft as a writer and as a thinker.
Absolutely. The other major role of libraries is that they are they're community centers.
Mhm.
They can, in many respects, be the absolute focal point of a community. And I think it's very sad when you see people living in very dehumanized cities, vast cities, where anonymity is very much the rule, where there's so many people, everything's moving around so quickly. People are losing a sense of being located in a particular place. They yearn for something. Now, there are various other institutions in society that can do that. You've got coffee shops. Coffee
Mhm.
shops do that. Used to, for example, bars used to do that a little bit more than they do now. Bars and pubs were there to
Mhm.
allow people to
Oh, yeah,
socialize.
the concept of the public house, yes.
Yeah, the concept of the public house. Now, the libraries in that sort of is that sort of thing. It's a central focal point where people know that they can go and they'll be exposed to ideas, they'll be exposed to stimulus, there'll be notices up about public talks, libraries organize public talks, that sort of thing. It's
Mhm.
absolutely essential, and people really yearn for that. They want that. They have it when they're at school. You know, they get a program and they meet other people when they're at school. Then they go out into the world, and suddenly, where is everybody, so to speak? Where's the
Mhm.
community?
I think it's interesting. Let me ask one brief rabbit hole question here. Are Do you read on digital media? Do you have a Kindle or equivalent Kobo, or are you a paper guy still?
I'm pretty much paper. I find the book as a physical object
Hmm.
um, is so marvelous. I love the feel of a book. I'm very interested in page design and typography and books, and I'm very hands on with my publishers in that respect. I get really deeply involved right at the very beginning with
Hmm.
the covers of my books with the
Yeah,
dovetail.
and the cover for the Perfect Passion Company is quite lovely. It's a very nice color choices, if I may. So,
Well, I shall pass that on to the designer, who's a
hmm,
very good friend.
yes.
And what usually happens is that my editors in New York or London or wherever they may be say we need a cover for this forthcoming book, and I usually come up with an idea, and
Mm,
I then speak to the design department in the publishers. So with the Perfect Passion company, I said I thought rather liked the idea of having some sort of Apple device on the front, and that
hmm.
sort of became a bit of a heart. And then we got various other features to it. But I think the cover of a book is very important. There's the old adage that you don't judge a book by a cover, but most people do. They
Hmm.
can,
Well, the fact of the matter, I mean, when you look at how in certain traditions, the so not to be too esoteric here, but to do magic, to actually do something that is magical, you need a somatic component. You need to be able to do something tactile. And I think the act of turning a page is the equivalent of
yeah,
it's not just saying abracadabra. You've got to do something,
yes,
and I'm a celebrator of the book as a book, not to the exclusion of apps and things like that.
yeah.
There's ways to transmit information,
Yeah.
but it's nice to have that in hand.
It's yes. I mean, if the book didn't exist, we would invent it as being the obvious and ideal way of doing what we ask the book to do.
Hmm.
It's readily portable. If you go to sleep, if you're reading it in bed and it falls over, it doesn't hit you on the nose as an iPad would be. You know, who amongst us hasn't
Chip
dropped
of
our
tooth, yes, right.
iPad? Yeah,
Though,
exactly.
to be fair, my wife does have a pile of books on the bedside that will fall over and kill us one night, but that's from the number of volumes. So,
I think that's right. But the book and the feel of the paper, but the aesthetic experience that the book gives
mhm.
is so is so important.
That's lovely.
Mm.
So, as we're wrapping up today, you've been very kind to us with your time. As we're wrapping up today, can I ask if you're currently working on your next project? Can you share a little snippet or a little preview of what's coming out of off your pen, your desktop, your typewriter?
Yes, I've just finished. I've got three books in production at the moment. In other words, I've given the manuscripts to my publishers. I've got volume 25 of the #1 Ladies to Text Agency book, which will come out in September.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got a new Isabel Dalhousie novel, which is volume 18 in that series, and that'll come out in the next few months. And then I've got a self-standing novel, which is set in Scotland, which is in the process of being edited. And what I'm actually writing at the moment, because I do about 5 or 6 books a year, so I usually have a fairly intense program through the year. What I'm writing at present is volume 2 of the Perfect Passion company series, a book which is going to be called Looking for You, and I'm really enjoying that. So that's what I'm doing right here in this room, and which I will return to when we finish our conversation.
That's absolutely wonderful. I'm glad that we were able to spend a little bit of time and get into your writer's den there. I do thank you, Alexander, for spending some time thinking these things through with us. The conversation about isolation and connection, the concepts of a moral compass pointing people towards compassion. This has been a delightful conversation today. I truly appreciate you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I want to invite everybody who's watching today to spend a little time during National Library Week with a project that we're doing alongside PEN America and the organization We Believe. We're asking people to send love letters to libraries and librarians. It's a fraught period, as Alexander said before, here in the States and around the world. It's a fraught period to be involved in something as big of an idea as writing, and the compassion that comes along, the empathy that comes along with reading. These folks and these institutions are under attack, and we want to send something that's very positive to them. So please do visit our colleagues over at We Believe at webelieveineducation.org/NLW-love-letter. You can find it on the homepage there, the homepage of EveryLibrary.org, my organization, and you can follow us on social media at EveryLibrary. We're trying to be ubiquitous, Alexander. We're doing what we can. So again, thank you for your time today. It's been very good to be with you. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, sir, we're out. I apologize for the time.